Dems worry, what happens if the speaker's race isn't over by January 6th? No one knows, though Democrats are bracing for that possible scenario. So this is the big, like, election steal concern. Legal Eagle put out a good video talking about the, well, legal elements of the election steal. And the good news is that the election steal... Okay, so let's assume Kamala Harris wins by an acceptable margin. Like, we're not talking like 50.1 to 49.9 in all these states. We're talking like enough of a margin that we know she wins. We don't have to worry about the old form of the election steal quite as much. The reason for that being that a bunch of the courts and the local county election boards have basically been preparing for this ever since 2020, and they are ready for like the avalanche that's coming their way. In terms of security, getting stuff counted quickly, fast tracking, legal challenges, there's a bunch of like preparations that have been made to deal with basically 2020 happening all over again. However, now we have this. House Democrats are increasingly alarmed by a potential threat to the transfer of presidential power. A protracted failure by Republicans to select a speaker if the GOP keeps control of the chamber, of the House. The House convenes on January 3rd to elect a speaker, just a few days before Congress is supposed to certify the results of this year's election. Chat, test your knowledge. What date do they certify the results of the year's election? It's a famous date. That was me, like, you get it. And it's unclear if Republicans, should they win a House majority, would elect a speaker in time. In January 2023, it took them 15 ballots in roughly 4 days to eventually select Kevin McCarthy. The inability of a fractious Republican conference to choose a leader would render the House virtually powerless. I love the genius of our founding fathers, where they built this big system, and then they were like, yeah, if just a few people in this system decide that they want to like put their feet in the ground and not do their job, everything grinds to a halt and they have infinite power. If you know, Mitch McConnell just doesn't want to put forward the Obama Supreme Court justice pick, doesn't want to put it down to a Senate vote, that's how it is. Midas Touch did a segment on this with a House Democrat. The House Democrat was like, well, I just hope Dems win the House, shrugs. That's great! Unable to do anything except keep voting to pick a speaker. If that fight dragged on for more than 3 days, it would threaten Congress's ability to hold a constitutionally mandated joint session on January 6, 2025 to certify the results of the presidential election. The insane thing is that in a working system, the obvious solution to this would be if there is not a new speaker chosen in time for the January 6th certification, you just use the old speaker. That's it. The fact that it's like, well, no, you actually have to have it done in 3 days or you can't do anything, but their term is ended. It doesn't matter. I know it's ended. It doesn't matter. That's insane. That'd be like if you're parents and you're leaving for a night out in the town because you want to like revive the spark in your marriage and your babysitter is late. You don't just leave and hope your kids are still alive when the babysitter arrives. Like, I'm sorry, you always need to have a functioning Congress. You can have breaks, but there always needs to be someone there for the certification of the vote. You can't have a break during January 6th. You just have to stay. I'm sorry. They're calling me in for one last job just before retirement. I'm sorry. I don't care if it's that. I don't care if the president gets to put their foot down and decide. There needs to be something. The fact that there's no caveat, like a temporary speaker, I don't know. Maybe this is Trump's little secret. This is Trump's little secret. Basically, everyone has agreed this is Trump's little secret. He was looking at Mike Johnson because he's an idiot and his brain is melted. He flat out like looked at Mike Johnson and was like, here's our secret to steal the election with the House specifically that we won't tell them about, but we'll tell you after the election. That would set up a constitutional crisis with no obvious solution. Vosh, what you're saying would mean that a speaker could retain power far past their term. What's happening now is that they can just, by not holding the vote, they can indefinitely delay the next president. This is so much worse. Congressional aides and constitutional experts have been puzzling over the scenario for months and have yet to arrive at a strategy. Great. Congress is legally required to convene on January 6th to certify the election results, but without a speaker, the House won't be able to establish rules governing how it operates. And members who would need to vote on any successful objection can't be sworn in until after those rules are adopted. Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, for those of you who aren't American or don't follow, believe it or not, every new Congress has to like reaffirm the rules of being in Congress because they decide on them. So like in a situation where you don't have a House Speaker, there's no, like, they can't do anything until that process is started. They can't just hit the ground running on the old rule set or anything. It is required every time that they be like, oh, here's the like 172nd Congress, here's the system. We need to like formally vote on it. We can't hit the ground running on the old system and then like backtrack the new vote or something. So the House determines the president, not the Electoral College. No. The House certifies the results. It's a ceremonial role. It's insane. It's a ceremonial role that we all agree they can't say no to. It's purely ceremonial. The January 6th certification of the votes is literally just a handing off of the torch. It's not no decision is being made. The next presidential administration could be indefinitely postponed because of a ceremonial. Members would need to vote, and any successful objection can't be sworn in until after those rules are adopted. McCarthy's successor, Speaker Mike Johnson, is hoping he can avoid the problems of his predecessor and get elected quickly, a concept that was considered standard practice before 2023. But some members of his conference have questioned his leadership. Hold on. If they can benefit from delaying, with open musing about whether they should vote for him as Speaker again. This has unnerved Democrats, many of whom are still rattled by GOP efforts to subvert the election in 2020. And last year's weeks-long speakership fight. Behind the scenes, they're bracing for another days-long speakership brawl if Republicans win the House. As a result of the protracted Republican infighting in 2023, we are concerned about the possibility that a similarly messy speaker fight could slip past January 6th. Again, to be clear, if it is to the benefit of Republicans to not have a new Speaker of the House selected by January 6th, they would just deliberately prolong the voting process and prevent the House from convening the joint session. Staff are looking into that scenario, as it's unclear how Congress would be able to comply with the Constitution's demands for a joint session when the House effectively doesn't exist. And guys, guess who gets to resolve disputes in moments of constitutional crisis? Guess which branch of government has the final say? There's less concern about the scenario if Democrats flip the House. Yeah, well, yeah, if Democrats get the House, none of this is really an issue. How likely is it the House goes to the GOP? Pretty likely, I'd say. Again, like, polling doesn't matter. Polling doesn't make sense. So, I don't know. I thought Dems were favored to win back the House. I've heard some back and forthing on this. I'm a little cynical about the House personally. I know that we overperformed in 2022, but there's something, I don't know, call it a ill omen. I earlier this morning, I thought about the House, and then a crow cawed and like flew off a power line and into the sky. It's a bad vibe. More reliable than polling, TBH. That's how I feel. If Trump wins, he could help quash or at least defang Johnson's headache by throwing his support behind Louisiana. There's another complication. If the House can't seat its own members, it also can't take steps necessary to facilitate the January 6th joint session, which occurs in the House chamber. New Congresses that convene after presidential elections typically pass a resolution on January 3rd, the first day of their session, formally greenlighting the joint session. So, chat, workshop this with me. Let's say Republicans keep the House and attempt to indefinitely delay the nomination of a speaker in order to push things back past January 6th. Question number one, why don't Democrats just vote for a speaker? Rather than voting for, say, Hakeem Jeffries, Democrats could throw all their votes behind one of the viable Republican candidates, guaranteeing their victory and thus ending the stalemate. That is something they could do. Is it within their power legally to just delay on holding the vote at all? I mean, how willing do you think they would be to just to engage in a level of obstructionism that was on par with what Mitch McConnell did back in 2015, where they're basically just like flat out, no, we're not even holding a vote, or like we're going to pretend there's a reason to not hold the vote. Like they would say something like, we're not going to hold a vote on this until the concerns about the election's viability are quashed, because we still have 70,000 ongoing lawsuits in a bunch of swing states over whether or not this was like, whether or not like a leprechaun actually flipped the votes after they went into the Dominion voting machine. Though if they did that, at that point, that would be a level of obstructionism that would be like at that point, you know, Mike Johnson might as well just walk around the Capitol building with a gun shooting Democrats, you know? Like that would be a level of obstructionism that would be so blatant that I feel like Dems would have a procedural reason to cut through it, you know? Isn't the flaw with this plan that it just makes Joe Biden stay president? Nope. The real thing they would want to cause is confusion, to toss the confusion over to the Supreme Court. But on January 20th, Joe Biden is no longer president. So the real goal, I think, would be if you tossed the authority to resolve a certification vote delay to the Supreme Court, what could the Supreme Court possibly say that would benefit Trump? Like, obviously, the Supreme Court could write in crayon, like, Trump is president. But, like, again, there are limits to the plausible deniability, you know? What could they say? What could they say? I feel like they couldn't. I feel like this plan might be really pathetic and desperate. I think this plan is actually really desperate from Republicans. If they hold the House but lose the presidency, I don't know if this actually gets them that much. I think the most they could get from this would be like a constitutional crisis where the Supreme Court fumbles but doesn't, like, I don't know if they could deliver a Trump presidency through this. I don't think there's any mechanism. Again, like they could write in crayon, like, oh, he's president. But again, like at that point, like the Supreme Court could just say that tomorrow. You know, like if you wanna operate on the assumption that they will ignore the rules so flagrantly that everyone, even liberals, will look at it and go like, we're not respecting that. We don't care what you have to say. Bolshevik, you're completely correct. It seems like the only thing that they would really be successful in doing, create more leeway for their other election stealing schemes. But that's not that much. Like that's not a very scary plan. It's like a potential constitutional crisis, but it would just look like a tantrum, you know? I don't think, like, they couldn't mount that into anything. They would have to do something else in addition to it. So what's the something else? Well, the only other something else I can think of is one that involves the House. The aforementioned, like, they deny the elector slate so no candidate reaches 270 electoral votes, so the vote goes to the House, and the House is Republican, so the Republican House votes for Donald Trump. But that requires them to have the House in play, so at that point, why even delay? To give a little bit more time for them to cook up some election fraud schemes? How much time are you going to buy with that? I don't know. I don't think this is actually that scary. It's just weird. I'm less pessimistic about SCOTUS than you. I don't think Roberts and Coney Barrett would overturn the Democratic result. You're probably correct about that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm saying there are limits to what the Supreme Court are willing to do. Roberts and Coney Barrett are Republicans. They're not both like insane, frothing at the mouth, insurrectionist lunatics. You know, they're not like Clarence Thomas. If there was like a decision Clarence Thomas could make to kill you personally with a gun, he would sign yes and he would ask for the gun. Like, he is actually a psychopath. Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett are, I mean, they're Republicans and everything that comes with it, but they're not, I think they're closer to being neocons. Alito too. Yes, Alito as well. Alito and Clarence Thomas would both do that. But Kavanaugh has not been as like militantly insurrectionist as people have expected him to be. Amy Coney Barrett has been downright like neocon at points. With some of her reasoning, have you read her reasonings? I know most of the time you get like, we read the Clarence Thomas stuff on stream because he's the lunatic, so we like go over his stuff. And also, I'm not a legally oriented content creator. Yeah, Amy Coney Barrett's woke, you know? I think Kavanaugh's just a coward. Yeah, probably. Okay, well, I guess, like, thinking about this logically, I guess it is nice to feel comfortable assuming that this is likely not much of a kill shot. That's good to think about. That's nice. Only if Dems win? No, even if Republicans win, the House, I mean, this plan is not that scary. Trump's lead over Harris in betting market erodes as platforms tighten odds. Everything just goes right back to 50-50. Elon must be so sad that he never got Polymarket up to 69% for Trump. A poll in Montana makes the GOP look really bad. From Luchtman, we did a last Montana poll. I've shut off replies. I'd be shutting off replies after this one too. Holy shit. Here's the details. Da, 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 da. Top lines president. Trump 51, Harris 39, other 5. In Montana, Tester +4. Boys, Montana's in play. Get ready for the Montana sweep. Blondtana. They never thought it was possible. Kuntz did so good against Holly. Yeah. Every state is a swing state this time. How funny would it be if the only pollsters that ended up being correct were the ones that were polling in like decidedly non-swing states and just wildly like somehow just nailed the assessment? I mean, what margins did Trump win Montana back in 2020? 2020 Montana election. What was it, like 35, 40 points? No, actually, closer than I thought. He won it by 16 in 2020, but by 20 in 2016. I didn't realize that he'd gone down by 4 points in Montana. Man, Montana's gotten woke. The real difference here, though, would be relative turnout. See, in this poll, Trump has only 51%, but in 2020, he had 57%. So even though the relative numbers are not that different from 2020, Trump's support would have gone down by 6 points. Assuming this poll is accurate, but that would be quite special. Please look at the most recent New Hampshire poll. We'll post it. Here's the 2018 Montana Senate race for comparison. Remember when we were a real country? Pretty darn close. This was before I was following politics consistently. Hey, Vosh just dropped off my ballot. What, only one? Vosh, you're misunderstanding the plan. The House doesn't decide who becomes president by a simple majority. Each state is allowed to one vote. I know. I'm aware of that. Yeah. But we weren't talking about that plan. We were talking about this different one about delaying the certification. I still don't understand how poly market is legal. Well, I mean, political betting is legal now. Or gambling. That was a pretty recent decision. Do states give votes to the Electoral College proportional to the popular votes those candidates receive? No. With the exceptions of only 2 states, which have a separate district, but even then, no. It's all or nothing in the district that the votes are counted in, because we have such a good system. I live in Montana. We have some pretty progressive shit going down. We have constitutionally protected abortion on the ballot and a vote to go to an open voting system. Do you have any polling on the abortion referendum on the ballot? The constitutional amendment, I mean? Are the Dems afraid that a Republican speaker won't certify the election like what Vance wanted to do? Republican speaker doesn't certify the election. The election is certified on January 6th by the sitting VP, which is, of course, Kamala Harris. So the situation we're looking for here is Kamala Harris certifying her own vote, which has happened before. I never got the New Hampshire poll. Is this the one you're talking about? Okay, this is ridiculous. Harris plus 28? Come on. Nothing. Where are you going to get plus 28 Harris anything? California? Maybe? Real? Truth nuke. We need a truth nuke emote. Real. Yeah, you'd have to go to DC to get margins this steep. What if real though? I mean, if real, then tomorrow is going to be the funniest day in American political. There will never before in history will there have been such a gap between the average poll and the actual results. That would be a truth nuke. What would the Electoral College look like if Harris wins New Hampshire by 28? All I know is that the map of the United States would look like the ocean. Insider Advantage right-wing pollster has Trump only up 6 in Iowa. Yeah, we saw these like cheap polls they crapped out at the last second to counter the Seltzer poll. But even this, like up 6.8 in Iowa, that's what you're bragging about? That's what you're contesting the results with? A one-day poll. Ohio Senate tied. Wait, let me guess. It's converging to a 50-50. Wow. I really like how blatant it is here. We're literally on the last day, November 4th, the day before the election, it becomes the brown note. Phenomenal. It's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that every swing state and every pivotal election, that all of them that people thought might be close, went to exactly 50-50 on the last day. That's great. Really modeling the hell out of reality right now. Just going to repost the CNN interview with her from last night. Hold on 1 second. Let me just like remind myself what New Hampshire usually goes. 2020 presidential New Hampshire. Yeah, Joe Biden won it by 7. Harris plus 28 is genuinely like the funny. This is crazy, man. Okay, this is what I'm saying when I talk about variance in polling, you know? This is what I'm talking about. We polled 20 of the best baristas in the state. uh, listen, this poll is definitely wrong. I choose to believe it completely. Oh, whoops. I didn't mean to. Well, I'll click on it. Sure. I believe in it completely. Anyone who doesn't believe in the Harris plus, 28, 26, Harris plus 28 in New Hampshire, you're going to get hit by a truth nuke. The truth fallout is going to dissolve your telomeres. Your DNA is going to be unraveling and floating through your blood like loose spaghetti. The truth nuke is going to kill your entire family. Me? I'm riding the truth nuke, okay? I'm completely unburdened. If you have one data point, Vosh, New Hampshire plus 28, what's your election prediction? My election prediction is basically the Kamala Harris Hyperborea image. If New Hampshire plus 28 is the only data point that I have to go off of.